Hi guys, it's Joey, and this is going to be the second video for the YouTube Pagan Challenge, which is Are You In or Out of the Broom Closet? And before we get started on my feelings on that, I have moved downstairs, so hopefully the light is better. I'm in front of the geeky bookshelf, so points if you recognise any of the geeky books. I have a hot drink and hopefully this lighting is better. It was driving me nuts upstairs, so I'm just going to have to be uncomfortable and be down here. So there's that. So before I get into the YouTube challenge, I'm going to just ramble for a minute. So if you want to just skip to about 5 minutes, that's probably where the video properly starts. With the healing series, I've got some more thoughts and bits coming up, and I'm just taking my time responding to comments and things. I appreciate all your comments, and it's just really because I'm going through it, so it takes a little bit longer for me to come back and sort of respond to people's responses to that stage. But we are going to be looking at some more healing probably today. I'll probably record one after this actually. So the question is about this week for YouTube Pagan Challenge, about whether you're in or out of the broom closet, so whether or not you are known for being pagan. And I think it really comes down to two concepts, two ideas, and one is kind of like a fear-based element, like there is an element of fear about being vocal in any spirituality, for fear of reprisal, for fear of mockery, for fear of disdain, for fear of judgment, or for, you know, down the opposite, not the opposite, down the far end of that is some really nasty stuff that people get attacked, people get physically abused and emotionally abused and all sorts because they come out as having a spiritual path. And the other side of it is the silence element, like how much silence is required for this path of ours. One of the four sort of pillars of witchcraft is considered to be silence, and understanding silence and understanding what that means to you in your path. I think I can offer a distinctly English perspective on this because I have lived in England most of my life, and to that end it comes differently, I think, living in England, because in certain parts of the world, in America and other parts of the world, if you become known for being a witch, or however label applicable here, there can be some pretty nasty repercussions, to the point of physical violence. And whereas I wouldn't completely write off that possibility in England, I think it's less likely here. I think the fear element in England, it begets a very passive-aggressive nastiness in England, and I think it's typical of how the society on the not pleasant side works in England, which is a real nasty passive-aggressiveness. And I can draw examples from my own experiences, and more so perhaps from other people who I've heard more recently and talked to and seen what they're going through, because they have a physical shop, a holistic shop, but they still get it. They still get all the drama-y nonsense around it. And the reason being that I don't come across it very often is because I'm a bit of a hermit, to be honest with you, and my YouTube expression is my way of reaching out to other pagans and witches and like-minded individuals and so on and so forth, amongst other expressions of self, putting things out there, hoping that they help, and putting myself out there, meeting people, promoting the store and all that sort of thing are reasons to be on YouTube. And once you're on YouTube and you're discussing it, you're public with it, whether you like it or not, because it is a hugely accessible public medium, and there's, you know, anyone can find it. It's very similar to Facebook. In a lot of circumstances Facebook is fairly open. I mean, it's less so now. It's less easy for people to find you if you don't want to be found. And even when you do want to be found, like, because I I have a name which basically is difficult to find me in the midst of millions of other Joe Morrises. But there you go. So it's not something that comes to me an awful lot. It's not a situation that I have to face an awful lot. I tend to gravitate towards places and people that are likely to be open-minded. You know, when I go to the local marketplace, I'm looking at the crystal store, so I'm talking to people around there, or the crystal seller in question, and they work with crystals. They're not going to be people who immediately judge. And when I go to the holistic place, there are people there who I've gotten to know who have varying spiritual beliefs, but they all work within a spiritual medium. The holistic shop is mainly holistic therapy, so they do suffer a great deal with the backlash of English passive aggressiveness. And the reason that they suffer with it is because the area which I live is quite Christianized. So I think there are 3 churches in my little village. It's a little village, it's not a big village. And the town over is, you know, has a cathedral and churches and a very Christianized council. So the council kind of runs the town, if you're confused about what a council government does. And I know that the holistic shop have had problems with these people. They tried to sell herbs, and by herbs I mean flowers, I mean lavender, rose petals, they have marigold. So, you know, flowers that you can find in the florists not far down the road. And the council basically vetoed them being allowed to do that because people might eat and hurt themselves with, you know, all these things that probably... I don't think you can hurt yourself eating flower petals unless you eat a lot of them, and but basically it was an excuse, a passive-aggressive excuse to stop them providing anything which could be conceived of as being spell ingredients, as being related to witchcraft or anything of that nature. They've also had people go into the shop. My favourite recounting story is when someone told them that incense was rolled on the devil's arse. And they should be ashamed of themselves. I think they should have charged a premium for that, because that sounds like expensive fucking incense. And they've, you know, they've had like religious groups find out that religious groups are praying for them because they've decided that they evil eye everyone and stuff like this. And that's the sort of passive aggressive stuff that you come up against in England. It tends to be ignorant, like don't care what you're doing, don't want to know, won't even, you know, speak to you about it. It's just passive aggressive. And the ways that I've come across it particularly is when I was living further down south, when I lived in Canterbury, I had a very religious couple of landlords, and they sent me a Bible. And they would send me, you know, biblical passages like through the post, and it's just like, whatever, okay, yeah, sure. So that tends to be what you come up against in England. It's not full-blown physical violence like you get in some places of the world. Not saying that that doesn't happen, but I think that's the exception rather than the rule. Yeah. So I don't think it's possible to be fully in the closet if you're on YouTube, because you are basically publicly stating how you feel about these matters. But is it something that I necessarily is in my day-to-day life? Well, no, not really. I don't feel the need to be... I don't know how to put it. Yeah, if you're going out, like, people might look at me and not necessarily think I was a witch, and people look at me all the time and think I have no idea what I'm talking about with the goddess Morrigan, because I don't fit a physical description of what they think it means to be whatever. I don't know what that physical description is, whether it's a little bit more gothic or something, I've no idea. But I don't need to parade my spirituality publicly, I don't feel the need to flaunt it. I don't feel the need to advertise it particularly, and that's not because I have any shame of it. In fact, I have a good, healthy amount of pride in being a witch, but I don't feel the need to ram it down anyone's throats because, to be honest, how much of anyone else's business is it, really? If you're coming here and you're looking for and watching videos, then basically you have sort of clicked it and agreed to the conversation. So you have sought out the conversation yourself, and at that point you know that you have, wittingly or not, entered into a dialogue about these spiritual matters by watching the videos. You have acquiesced to what the content is, and if most videos are clearly labelled, and at that point that becomes your choice. So that's something different. But when in everyday life, do I feel the need to blazon it all over me? Do I feel the need to stamp it on my head? Do I feel the need to shout it from the rooftops? Not really. No, not really. I think there is great power in the secrecy element, the silence element, and being underestimated, to be frankly honest with you. If people don't understand, they don't want to know, if they're going to be aggressive to you, then that's fine, then take that step back, be shrouded in the secrecy of what it is you actually do. You don't need to share everything. Tolkien, right? Sorry, I just realised Tolkien is behind me, and la la la, Holy Grail right there. Right, sorry, completely and utterly distracted myself from my trail of thought. And yeah, being underestimated. So there's absolutely, no need for ramming anything down anybody else's throats, unless that's the prior arrangement, to each their own. So I'm distracting myself. I think that's true of all religion and all spirituality, or however you want to sort of paraphrase, because there is an element of suggesting that certain people are spiritual but not religious, and they don't like the coining of religion, and this is more of a path versus, and there's all that description and dialogue, which is really fascinating and interesting. Actually, it's how people perceive their paths, but everybody's going to perceive what they want to perceive, and through their own lens. We only understand things through our own eyes and ears and senses, and through our own understanding of the world around us, and depending on who we are, where we live, what we've been through, and how we interact with parts along our path, depends really on what the broom closet actually is, and how we perceive it. For me, I didn't grow up in a particular spiritual or religious background. That wasn't part of my family dynamic, if you like. There was, this sort of, we're totally Christians, brought out at random odd moments, but otherwise, come on, you're not. Knowing how to recite the Lord's Prayer doesn't make you a Christian, does it? Really? Come on. And besides that, my mother had done spells in her own time as well. There are at least 2 that I know of. So largely, any time religion was brought up in the household, it was basically just, again, this sort of passive-aggressive nastiness, because I've decided I don't like you and I'm going to try and instill fear and stuff into you. It was something that all 3 children were interested in, me and my middle sister much more so. And as a result, there was a family sort of discouragement, as there always was with everything. And the comment that I really remember, and I probably have stated this before somewhere, is that, but they have altars. This is why, pagans are bad people, because they have altars. At which point I turned around and looked at her and went, so do Catholics. But yeah. It's never really been an issue for me, therefore coming out, because after a certain point everything I did and said was wrong anyway, so I basically knew my own mind, and this was the problem. So growing up, once I began to learn the English language correctly, once I began to really open myself up to ideas that had always been present, like I discussed last week, energies that had always been within myself, by the way, Star Wars mug. Sorry, totally fritzing all over the place today. But once I opened myself up to ideas that had already been there, it was just a very natural progression to me, and I didn't care if there was resistance from my parents, because they'd both talked about having various gifts. I knew, for example, that both parents in their teenage years had been involved in spirit stuff, in a Ouija board stuff, in going to spirit circle stuff, in having abilities that they believed they had. And so to be told at any given point that, you know, it was evil was kind of like, what are you talking about? You know, you just decided this minute that it is. But because I'm estranged from my family, that has therefore not an issue. You see, I'm a hermit, and although I am fairly hermity, it means I pick and choose my in-life physical relationships with great care. So people that are in my physical life are aware of it, and it either is a non-issue, it's either, you know, okay, fair enough, or it's just part of who I am. Some people are vaguely, and I don't tend to discuss it en masse now, because I make videos discussing it, you know, there you go. There's a wealth of information right there, off you go. When I was at university and I was really studying for the first time, witchcraft as well as, you know, studying, I came across one guy who was an atheist, and basically he was demanding to know my thoughts and beliefs on everything. And at that point, my answer was, I don't feel well versed enough to give you a sort of solid statement. I don't feel that, basically he wanted a debate, and I was like, at this point in my path, I don't want to debate with you about whether or not there is a god or goddess or spirituality, or whether religion is evil or whatever, because it's not helpful to where I was at the time. It's not something I felt the need to do. I have a faith, a belief, yes I do. Do I need to tell everyone else that my faith and belief is right? Well, no, because there are 8 million ways up the mountain. And do I need to tell anybody else that their way is wrong? No, because I'm not that freaking full of myself that I think I can tell people that there is one way, one spirituality, and that me as a little human being, one little human being on the planet, has all the answers. Of course not. Don't be so ludicrous. Nonsense. I don't like that way of thinking, so that's how I feel about it, you know. And I don't think I've ever had much problem expressing myself, but there are occasions where I basically refuse and understand the power of the words no. I refuse to engage with this. I refuse to belittle what I've been through by trying to have to defend what I've been through, how I believe, my path, what makes it. But I think there really is, of course, particularly in England, this passive-aggressive thing that you come up against. There is this idea that you're crazy. You're speaking to your imaginary friend. Like, okay, maybe you should speak to your imaginary friend, maybe be less of a dick that way. But basically, it's not overly difficult to deal with the passive aggressive stuff, because it's just like, you know what, if you're going to go down that road, whatever, I just don't care. And there comes a point, I think, in everybody's path where you have to really align yourself with what you allow to bother you and what you don't. And this is where I think the broom closet thing comes in, because basically the idea of being in the broom closet is you're so afraid of what people's reactions are going to be that you hide away, versus being sensible about it, which I understand that some people have to be sensible about it. Their jobs require that they don't shout it from the rooftops. I work for myself at home, building this store, so that's not an issue. And people who come to my business pretty much know what I'm about, and people that come for pretty candles come for pretty candles, and they're good with that. And, you know, I'm good with that too. As long as you're enjoying it, I'm good. But yeah, so I think there is an element of secrecy which is appropriate. I think that, you know, you don't have to be all things to all people. You don't have to discuss everything if you don't want to. If you want to be completely highly secretive about the whole thing and have a air of mystery, then that's entirely up to you. That's your own business. So that's how I feel about a lot of these things, that it's basically what works for you. And if you feel safer in the closet, if you don't wish to be discussing it, if you just want to be watching videos rather than interacting, and you take something from it, and it's embracing part of who you are and taking from it, then that's totally up to you, and that's what you should be doing, and that's healthy, you know. So that is how I feel about being in the broom closet. No, I'm not particularly. I don't feel the need to shout it out from the rooftops either, but I am who I am, and that's it. So that's it for this video for this week. Many blessings.